The afternoon sun bathed the small town in golden light when Mary, a 92-year-old woman, decided it was time for a change in her life. With slow but determined steps, she pushed open the door of the local animal shelter, the bell above tinkling softly. "Can I help you, ma'am?" asked a young employee, surprised to see such a frail, elderly woman walking in alone. "Yes, dear," Mary replied with a gentle smile. "I'm here to adopt a dog." The employee hesitated. "A dog? Are you sure? We have some very gentle cats that maybe—" Mary raised her hand, interrupting her. No, I want a dog. A big one, if possible." As they walked down the corridors, barks echoed off the walls. Mary suddenly stopped in front of a kennel. Inside, a gray pit bull stared at her with curious eyes. "This one," Mary said firmly. "I want this one." The employee paled. "Ma'am, that might not be the best idea. Pit bulls can be unpredictable." Mary laughed, a surprisingly strong sound for someone so small. "Dear, at 92, I'm unpredictable too." Hours later, Mary left the shelter with Kiko, her new companion. As they walked down the street, the neighbors watched in astonishment. Worried whispers echoed along the sidewalks. "Has she gone mad? Someone needs to warn her family. That dog is going to kill her." Mary, oblivious to the comments, smiled at Kiko. "Don't worry, my dear. They'll learn. We both have a lot to teach about not judging by appearances." That night, Mary's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Worried family members pleaded with her to reconsider. "Mom, please," her daughter begged. "It's too dangerous." Mary sighed, stroking Kiko's head as he slept peacefully at her feet. "Dear, life is too short to be afraid. Sometimes the most unexpected risks bring the greatest joys." As night fell over the town, Mary and Kiko cuddled up, two unlikely beings brought together by fate, ready to face the world together, defying all expectations. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Mary's once quiet house now echoed with the sound of heavy paws and soft laughter. Kiko, the pit bull many feared, revealed himself day after day as a gentle giant. One sunny morning, Mary sat on her porch watching Kiko play in the garden. Her neighbor Sarah approached hesitantly. "Mary?" Sarah began, her voice laced with concern. "Aren't you afraid of... well, you know..." Mary smiled, her eyes shining with a wisdom only years can bring. "Afraid, Sarah? The only fear I have is not having enjoyed every moment of this life. Look at him." Kiko was chasing a butterfly, his tongue hanging out, completely unaware of the prejudices surrounding him. "See how he loves unconditionally," Mary continued. "We humans could learn a lot from that." As the months passed, Mary and Kiko's routine solidified. Every morning they walked together through the local park. At first, people kept their distance, casting wary glances. But over time, the sight of the frail 92-year-old lady and her loyal companion became a beloved part of the town's landscape. One afternoon, while Mary was knitting in her favorite chair with Kiko lying at her feet, she heard a noise coming from the kitchen. She tried to get up, but her legs failed her. Before she could call for help, Kiko was already by her side, offering support. "Oh, my dear," Mary whispered, tears in her eyes. "What would I do without you?" That night, as the moon bathed the room in silver light, Mary lay in bed, Kiko nestled beside her. She stroked his ears, reflecting on the past 5 months. "You know, Kiko," she murmured, "they said I was crazy for bringing you home. But the truth is, you brought me back to life." Kiko lifted his head, his eyes meeting Mary's with a comprehension that transcended words. "We're an unlikely pair, aren't we?" Mary chuckled softly. "An elderly lady and a feared pit bull. But look at us now, inseparable." And so, night after night, day after day, Mary and Kiko strengthened their bond. Every shared moment, every challenge overcome together, was a living testament that love and understanding can bloom in the most unexpected places. The community, which once viewed them with suspicion, now watched with admiration the mutual devotion between the elderly lady and her faithful canine companion. The sun had barely risen on the horizon when the silence of the quiet street was brutally interrupted. A high-pitched scream, filled with pure terror, echoed through the neighborhood, freezing the blood of everyone who heard it. "Help! Someone help me!" The voice was unmistakable. It was Mary. Louise, the next-door neighbor, dropped her coffee cup, the hot liquid spilling across the kitchen floor. Her heart raced. "Oh my God! Mary!" She ran to the window, her trembling hands pulling back the curtains. Mary's house looked normal from the outside, but the screams continued, growing more desperate. "No! Please! No!" Panic spread through the street like wildfire. Doors flew open, worried faces appeared in windows. Everyone had the same thought. The Pitbull had finally attacked. Tom, the neighbor across the street, was already on the phone. "Police! We need urgent help on Oak Street, number 42. We believe an elderly woman is being attacked by a dog." Meanwhile, Louise, driven by a sudden surge of courage, ran to Mary's house. Her heart pounded in her chest as she frantically knocked on the door. "Mary! Mary, are you okay? Open the door!" Silence. For a terrifying moment, the screams ceased. Louise pressed her ear against the wood, trying to hear any sound. Suddenly, a low, threatening growl made her blood run cold. "Oh no," she whispered, backing away. "Kiko, what have you done?" The street was now in complete chaos. Neighbors gathered, some crying, others arguing over what to do. The distant sound of sirens began to approach, heightening the tension in the air. "I always said that dog was dangerous," shouted a man, his voice trembling with anger and fear. "Poor Mary," sobbed an elderly woman. "She trusted him so much." The sirens grew louder, closer. The anxiety was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. What would they find when the door was opened? What would be Mary's fate? As the police arrived, screeching their tires on the curb, one last scream echoed from inside the house, followed by a dull thud. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with unimaginable terror. The entire neighborhood held its breath, their eyes fixed on Mary's front door, waiting for it to open and reveal the horror everyone feared was on the other side. Says months earlier. The silence in Mary's house was deafening. Every room seemed to echo with the absence of Henry, her husband of 65 years. Sitting in her favorite armchair, Mary stared blankly at the empty chair across the room, where Henry used to read his newspaper every morning. "Oh, Henry," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "How will I go on without you?" The walls, once silent witnesses to laughter and lively conversations, now seemed to close in on her, amplifying her loneliness. The days dragged on, each one more solitary than the last. One morning, while having her tea, Mary heard a commotion outside. Curious, she approached the window and saw a truck from the local animal shelter parked on the street. Something inside her stirred, a spark of hope she hadn't felt in weeks. "Maybe," she murmured to herself, an idea beginning to form in her mind. That afternoon, Mary found herself at the local shelter, her heart beating with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. As she entered, she was greeted by a cacophony of barks and meows. "Can I help you, ma'am?" asked a young employee, smiling kindly. Mary hesitated for a moment. I'm looking for a companion." As they walked down the corridors, Mary felt increasingly disheartened. None of the animals seemed to connect with her in the way she had hoped, until a pair of amber eyes stared at her from one of the last kennels. A gray pit bull, large and muscular, but with a gaze so gentle that Mary felt her heart melt. "This one," she said, her voice firm for the first time in months. "I want to meet this one." The employee seemed to hesitate. "Ma'am, are you sure? Pit bulls can be complicated." But Mary wasn't listening anymore. She knelt down, with some difficulty, in front of the kennel, and the pit bull approached, pressing his nose against the bars. "Hello, dear," Mary whispered, tears in her eyes. "I think we both need a friend, don't we?" At that moment, something inexplicable happened. A connection, a spark of mutual understanding passed between the elderly lady and the rejected dog. Mary knew, with a certainty she hadn't felt in a long time, that she had found her new companion. "I'll name him Kiko," she declared, standing up with renewed determination. "And we're going home." As she signed the adoption papers, Mary felt, for the first time since Henry's passing, that she had a purpose again. She knew she would face challenges and concerns from her loved ones, but she also knew that with Kiko by her side, she wouldn't be alone anymore. "Let's go, Kiko," she said, leaving the shelter with her new friend. "We have a new life ahead of us." And so, with slow but determined steps, Mary and Kiko set out to face the world together. Two lonely hearts that found comfort in each other. The soft sound of paws against the wooden floor echoed through Mary's house, mingling with the tinkling of teacups and the occasional contented sigh from the elderly lady. It was a Sunday morning, 3 months after Kiko's arrival, and the routine that had developed between the two was as natural as the sunrise. Mary was sitting in her favorite armchair, watching Kiko, who, lying at her feet, lazily chewed on a toy. She smiled, remembering the tumultuous early days. "Do you remember when you knocked over the flower vase, my dear?" she said, leaning down to stroke Kiko's ears. "I thought we'd never understand each other." Kiko lifted his head, his amber eyes fixed on Mary with a devotion that made her heart melt. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Sarah, Mary's daughter. "Mom?" Sarah's voice sounded worried. "How are you? The dog isn't causing problems, is he?" Mary chuckled softly. "Oh, Sarah, if only you could see. Kiko is the gentlest companion I could ask for. Did you know he helps me up when my legs are tired?" There was a moment of surprised silence on the other end of the line. He does that?" "Yes, dear. And more. He reminds me to take my medication, accompanies me on our daily walks. Honestly, I think I'm healthier now than I've been in years." As the days passed, the unlikely duo became a familiar sight in the neighborhood. Mary, with her slow but determined steps, and Kiko, always attentive and protective by her side. The neighbors, who initially crossed the street to avoid them, now stopped to chat, charmed by the pit bull's gentleness. One afternoon, as they were returning from their walk, Mary tripped on the sidewalk. Before she could fall, Kiko was there, firm as a rock, offering support. "Oh, my hero," Mary murmured, regaining her balance. Tears of gratitude shone in her eyes. That night, lying in bed with Kiko nestled beside her, Mary reflected on the change in her life. "You know, Kiko," she whispered, stroking the dog's soft fur, "when Henry passed, I thought my life was over. But you brought me back to life. Who would have thought my savior would be a pit bull?" Kiko responded with a soft purr, pressing closer to Mary. The months passed, and the bond between them only grew stronger. Mary, who once feared loneliness, now found joy in each day. And Kiko, the dog many feared, had found a home where he was loved unconditionally. Together, they proved that love and loyalty can blossom in the most unexpected places, challenging prejudices and expectations. And while the rest of the world slept, in the little house on Oak Street, an elderly lady and her faithful canine companion rested, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. The day dawned like any other on Oak Street. The summer sun was already warming the sidewalks when Mary opened the curtains, Kiko by her side, lazily wagging his tail. "What a beautiful day, isn't it, my dear?" Mary smiled, stroking Kiko's head. Little did she know that this peaceful day was about to turn into a nightmare. It was almost 11 a.m. when the first scream echoed through the neighborhood. Louise, who was watering her plants, dropped the watering can, her heart racing in her chest. "Help! Someone help me!" It was Mary's voice, filled with pure terror. Louise ran to the fence, her wide eyes fixed on Mary's house. "Mary? Mary, are you okay?" More screams followed, interspersed with fierce barking. Louise's blood ran cold. Her worst fears seemed to be coming true. "Oh my God," she murmured. "Kiko attacked Mary." Within minutes, the street was in an uproar. Neighbors emerged from their homes, some in panic, others paralyzed by shock. Tom, the neighbor across the street, was already on the phone. "Police? We need urgent help. We believe an elderly woman is being attacked by a pit bull." Louise, driven by a courage she didn't even know she possessed, ran to Mary's front door. She could hear sounds of struggle and objects breaking inside. "Mary!" she shouted, pounding frantically on the door. "Mary, open the door! We're here to help!" For a moment, there was silence. Then Mary's trembling voice came through. "No, don't come in. Everything's fine." But the fierce barking that followed contradicted her words. Louise backed away, her heart in her throat. "What do we do?" she asked the other neighbors who had gathered. "We have to get in there," someone shouted. "It's too dangerous," another retorted. The sound of sirens in the distance brought momentary relief, but the tension continued to build. What was really happening inside that house? Louise, determined to do something, began circling the house, looking for a way in. That's when she noticed the bathroom window slightly open. "I'm going in," she announced, surprising herself with her resolve. "Louise, no! It's madness!" one of the neighbors shouted. But Louise was already moving. With her heart pounding in her chest and her hands trembling, she began to climb up the side of the house, determined to reach the window. Meanwhile, Mary's screams continued, interspersed with barks and growls. The entire street was in suspense, all eyes fixed on the house, fearing the worst but hoping for a miracle. What would Louise find when she got inside? What was really happening to Mary and Kiko? The tension was palpable, and every second felt like an eternity as the drama unfolded on Quiet Oak Street. With her heart in her throat, Louise finally managed to squeeze through the bathroom window. The inside of the house was eerily quiet now, a stark contrast to the screams and barks from moments ago. "Mary?" Louise called softly, her voice trembling. "Kiko?" She cautiously moved down the hallway, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. As she approached the living room, she heard muffled voices. Louise froze, holding her breath. "It's over, Mary. Hand over your late husband's jewelry and no one gets hurt." The voice was male, threatening. Louise's heart raced. It wasn't Kiko that was the danger, but an intruder. "Never!" Mary's voice was firm, defiant. "Those jewels are my memories of Henry. You'll have to kill me to take them." Louise peeked through the crack in the door, and the scene she saw left her speechless. A masked man stood menacingly close to Mary, but between them, growling fiercely, was Kiko. The Pitbull, far from being a threat, was protecting Mary with every fiber of his being. At that moment, the sirens blared nearby. The intruder, startled, made a sudden move toward Mary. "Kiko, now!" Mary shouted. In the blink of an eye, Kiko lunged, grabbing the man's arm with his powerful jaws. The man screamed in pain, dropping a knife that Louise hadn't noticed before. Taking advantage of the distraction, Louise rushed into the room. "Mary, are you okay?" "Louise!" Mary exclaimed, surprised and relieved. "Thank God you're here. Call the police quickly!" But it wasn't necessary. The next moment, the front door was kicked open, and police officers stormed into the room, weapons drawn. "Police! Everyone stay still!" The scene the officers found was surreal. A masked man on the floor, Kiko still holding him firmly, Mary standing with a triumphant expression, and Louise watching it all with a mix of shock and admiration. As the intruder was handcuffed and led away, the neighbors crowded at the entrance, stunned by the revelation. "Kiko. Kiko saved Mary?" someone murmured, incredulous. Mary, tears in her eyes, knelt beside Kiko, hugging him tightly. "My hero," she whispered. "You're the best friend I could have asked for." The news spread quickly. The Pitbull everyone feared had turned out to be a hero, protecting his elderly owner from a dangerous robber. The community's perception changed overnight. In the days that followed, Mary and Kiko were celebrated. Neighbors came to apologize for their hasty judgments, bringing treats for Kiko and flowers for Mary. "You know," Mary said to Louise one afternoon as they watched Kiko play in the garden, "sometimes love and loyalty come in the most unexpected packages. Kiko taught me never to judge a book by its cover, or a dog by its breed." Louise nodded, moved. "You two have taught us all a valuable lesson about prejudice and unconditional love." And so, on quiet Oak Street, an elderly lady and her faithful pit bull became symbols of courage, loyalty, and the transformative power of true love, proving that heroes can emerge in the most unexpected places.